On March the 14th, 4 days after the World Health Organization declared the coronavirus outbreak to be a pandemic, I went to an academic online discussion forum and asked how people thought the pandemic would affect teachers and teaching. I got a lot of interesting answers, mostly from educators, but there was one written by a second-year undergraduate student at University College London that particularly caught my attention. He wrote, "My university was recently closed, but to be honest, this is unlikely to affect my learning since all of our lectures are recorded anyway." Conversely, in response to a similar question in a different forum, a colleague working at a university here in Japan commented, "I would say that my institution is disturbingly unprepared for nearly everything. They are somewhat behind the times in many ways." So let's start there. With schools and universities closed over most of the country, how ready is Japan to take learning online?
Okay, well, I'll say then, at least in this part of Japan, the universities are not prepared, and everyone's scrambling.
And I agree with Gregory that we're not very set up technologically. We're half step, a quarter step behind.
So the approach right now is to keep it as low tech as possible. We don't have the architecture, actually the ability with the university servers to really go online with the videos, with this, with lots and lots of people. So no, we're not prepared, and I think that it's going to be pretty basic and pretty rough over this next semester.
So one side of this issue is overcoming technical hurdles and glitches. Once we've got those sorted out, everything's going to be okay, right? Well, not really. Technical glitches are just part of the problem.
For the university that I'm at currently, we're very careful about putting anything online because our university is the top, ostensibly the top one in the prefecture, and they're very careful about their image. So they don't want teachers putting courses or anything online. They're free to discuss it in the classroom, but they wouldn't want it to be potentially controversial for their public relations image outside. So there's very little of that out there.
So there are technical issues and human ones. In order to make the transition to online learning effectively, there has to be a consensus. People have to agree to make it work. And that isn't always what's happening. The human issues are every bit as complicated and confusing as the technical ones.
Privacy is a concern here, and of course, this also involves committee meetings that we have if we are doing entrance exams or things like that. Of course, it's very important, but they're very concerned about that. And it's also a concern from the faculty side, because there are people who feel that their lectures are protected, should be protected by copyright, that they are intellectual property.
And of course, that's a particular concern on platforms like Zoom.
Intellectual property could be hacked and stolen that way, and there would be people who would go through miles and miles of footage looking for it in the right circumstances.
I can see that happening. I can see the problems of Zoom in terms of security of data and so forth. What you were saying before about putting lectures up online, can they not be within a login so that they are purely accessible to people who have logged into that using Moodle or whatever it might be, so that it's specific to that particular class? It is not out there for the general public. Can it not be set up in that kind of way? And is it not already set up in that? I mean, Moodles surely are not accessible to the general public.
Right. I have not used Moodle because the person that runs the server for my department is he makes me sound like a freewheeling liberal when it comes to net security. He's afraid of everything. And so Moodle, he won't unlock some of the basics for for even using Moodle. I would have to make my own server within a server to put
Right.
Moodle there, and I don't have that time or that expertise to do it. So.
Right.
And before we dismiss that as some kind of neo-Luddite rejection of modern technology, let me just point out that there are risks, even to using learning platforms like Moodle, which require a login. In spite of that, though, there's a bewildering number of online courses offered by universities in countries like the UK and the United States, and while there are some Japanese universities that offer them, online learning hasn't caught on in Japan to anything like the same extent.
Most places I've seen in the States and in the UK,
Yeah.
Where I've seen professors actually with someone is around to put a video camera on them and follow them in the class. That's not going to happen. And then once you get the video, how do you get it to the students? That's, it's just crazy.
So even if you sort out all the production problems, you get past the technical issues and you get past the interpersonal and bureaucratic issues, there are still going to be problems. There's the problem of transmission. Because this is not just about teachers and educational institutions, it's about students too.
Computer literacy has gone down. I haven't done any research on this, but it's just glaringly apparent that from, say, even the year 2000, I think probably my students had higher levels of computer literacy than they do now. And to some now, it seems like a foreign object, whereas they're light years away from me in terms of using and downloading quickly web applications for their smartphones.
For the vast majority of the students that I've encountered over I'd say almost the past 20 years, they are not as net savvy when it comes to instructional technology as they are with their own mobile devices for their own communication with each other. Most of the students are going to have a real steep learning curve during this semester, where a lot of classes will be going online.
We have at least 3 generations of users of the technology.
We've spoken about the lack of computer literacy amongst the students. It's even less amongst the faculty, many of them who are about maybe 10, 15 years older than me and don't use computers except for email.
We have those who don't, many of them probably are around about our age, or kind of the older generation, who scarcely use the technology at all except for emails. We have our generation, which is used to using a laptop or a desktop. And we have the generation of students, which is mostly geared these days towards iOS and like mobile phones and things. We've got real challenges there because our students have adapted within a 20-year period, as you say, to a different technology. Mm-hmm. And if we're not really in gear with computers, we're far more out of gear when it comes to apps and what have you on mobile devices.
Between technical issues, bureaucratic and interpersonal issues, and issues arising from the different ways in which people of different generations interact with the technology, there's really only one answer.
I'm going to be hope for the best and plan for the worst.